So just before exams start, I wanted to post a video for you to maximise your marks, regardless of how much or how little knowledge you think you've got in your head. So a couple of thoughts first, and then 5 tips for you. Number one, I want you to recognise that the psychology of exams, the psychology of an exam season, it is not a minor issue. I often encourage students to start getting aggressive in their attitude towards their exams, start getting a bit stroppy, because I often use the analogy that an exam is like a boxing match. The examiner hits you with a question and I want you to hit them back. I want you to hit them back by using as much terminology as you can and writing the best answer that you can. And don't you dare give up partway through that exam. You're to keep on hitting right until you're told to stop. Thought number 2. If you come out of the exam hall feeling good about the exam, absolutely fantastic. Go with it. Relish the feeling. If you come out of an exam feeling rubbish, I want you to remember that your feelings do not necessarily reflect the number of marks you got in that paper. I have had so many students come out of exam rooms nearly distraught and actually distraught about how they felt they did in the exam. And so often it bears no relevance to how they actually achieved. So keep that in mind if you have a bad exam. 5 tips for maximising your marks. Number 1, plan to sleep well. Finish your work an hour before you plan to go to bed to sleep. In that hour, watch something rubbish on telly. What's your favourite programme that switches your brain off? If you find it difficult to sleep, here's my tip. I sleep with my phone next to my bed and the headphones plugged in with a radio station, pretty boring one, or a podcast already lined up, so that if I can't sleep or I wake up in the middle of the night, I put the headphones in and I get the radio or podcast started. It keeps your brain thinking about something else until it just drifts off to sleep. Tip number 2, keep your brain as calm as you can. I'm putting a card up linking to my exam panic video. Watch this if you are starting to get very stressed and starting to panic. The message is these exams are not going to define your future happiness and your fulfillment. Keep them in perspective. They are not the be-all and end-all. Tip number 3, in the exam room, read the question carefully. Read it as carefully as you can, given the time constraint that you're going to be under. Read it for clues. Does it tell you to use your knowledge of a particular topic? Are you inspired about something else to write in your answer when you reread it? I often am. If it asks you to describe something, say what you see. If it asks you to explain, that means describe a biology process using terminology that says how or why something happens. Tip number 4, show off your terminology. When you suss out what the topic of the question is, make sure you use that terminology in your answer. It's what's going to boost your marks. And here you go. When you get an application question, which you've actually not got very much idea what it's asking you or what it's about, still use your terminology. Give the answer your best shot and use the terminology for the topic that you think it's about. And finally, tip number 5, this is for AQA students, and it's for AQA students who know that they are aiming for a C grade or lower. I want you to bear in mind that the synoptic essay has a large proportion of its marks which are just what do you know marks. So prioritise the synoptic essay. To maximise the number of marks in that essay, you need to write 4 or 5 paragraphs of relevant content using terminology as much as possible. But those 15 out of the 25 marks available for that skill are the majority of the AO1 or recall marks that are in that paper 3. They're going to be easier to get than getting marks from those really difficult application questions before the essay question. So there are my 5 tips. Plan to sleep well. Try and keep your brain calm. Watch the video about that. Read questions carefully for inspiration, for instructions about what it wants you to do. Show off your terminology. Use the terminology that you know. And paper 3, prioritise the synoptic essay. And by that I mean either make sure you give it the time it needs or even consider doing it first. I really hope that these tips help you, regardless of how much you feel you've got inside your head now. I believe that these will help you maximise your marks in the exam. I do want to wish you all the very best and give those examiners a run for their money.